Well, Alexandra, we want to have a conversation about the big challenges facing all of us in the media industry. But I thought we'd start with you and your new role. And congratulations on being the first woman editor of Reuters, which is a wonderful development for all of us. But maybe you could tell us, after the last few months having in seat, where you see your big challenges in the new role going into the new year and maybe slightly longer term as well.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me here, and it's great to have a chat with you. And we've been Zooming now for almost 2 years. We've almost gotten used to it. It almost seems informal, like you and I are just sitting next to each other. So look, I think I've been in this role for 6 months, and it's been a baptism of fire for a number of reasons. Clearly, all of us, we're coming out of, and actually, I think we maybe can't even say coming out of, we're still in the middle of the pandemic. And so we are still grappling with many issues, including the fear that exists still among many people that they or their loved ones could get sick despite the vaccinations. The questions over how we are going to get back into the office, what is that going to look like, and how can we work effectively into the long term? Because I think that while we have been extremely successful, we Reuters, but in general, I think the news organizations have been extremely successful in running their operations online and virtually. Clearly, this can't go on forever. And that buzz of the newsroom that is really needed for, the exchange of ideas and the creativity and the learning, the training, and somehow we need to make sure that we reintroduce that into our newsrooms. So we have the pandemic. For me, personally, we also, have a moment of great transformation in our newsroom and also at our parent company, Thomson Reuters. So it's a period of great change. It's exciting, new investment, but clearly that needs to be handled. And then I think you have longer term trends that have been exacerbated perhaps by the pandemic. And I think for the news industry, those could be certainly the technological one that we are facing, the arms race that is getting the news out there to the world fast. But then what that means amid the world of social media and with audiences, particularly younger audiences that get their news through aggregators, in non-traditional ways. So I think there's the technological challenge there. And I should say, there's also therefore a disintermediation that is happening. Individuals, institutions, governments are going straight to the public, to that public that we were serving sort of as the intermediary. So I think there's technological aspect. Of course, there's also the sort of political, economic and societal aspect, and that is around polarization. This is not new, as I said, but perhaps exacerbated by the pandemic, is polarization that we're seeing certainly in politics, certainly in society, and in media. And I think that over the last few years, some media organizations, in order to keep that public that is slipping away, has also polarized and has gone to one side or the other. This is something that we at Reuters really try every day not to do. We really try to be different by sticking to the middle, sticking rigorously and religiously to fact-based journalism. But clearly there are pressures out there. So that's what I would say are the challenges at the moment.
So there's a lot to talk about from what you just said. You've got the tech arms race that we talked about, the disintermediation, polarization. In a sense, does that not play to the strengths of a news organization like Reuters? Right? You are global. You've been working in this distributed fashion across bureaus, across time zones for the longest time. So it's stuff you know how to do. And also the demand or the desire from the audience for more credible voices and more authoritative, reliable news. All of those are, in a way, playing to what Reuters can and has been doing. do you feel that that's in a way reinforces your value proposition for the audience, or is the challenge from the tech platforms and the arms race, as you put it, more overwhelming relative to the strength that you have?
So you've said it very eloquently. I think I'm going to have you come in and talk to the newsroom. Yes, I mean, of course I would say yes, but I truly believe that. And again, I think the pandemic has brought that into focus. And that's because during the pandemic, people were making life or death decisions, literally life or death decisions on news, on what they were reading, on what they were viewing. And so the getting it right and getting the facts right were ever more important. And that is true at an individual level. So do I wear a mask? Do I get my vaccination? Do I drink Clorox? At a very individual level, but also at a country level and at a global level. It was very important. I think what we brought to the equation here is what I call, not the best word, but our glocality. So yes, we are global, but we are also very local in all the places, in the 200 places where we operate. And that is important because we could provide that trusted news that mattered because we were providing it for the nation in which we were operating. So that, for example, when governments around the world were claiming that the numbers were lower than they actually were, we were there to say, actually, this is the number. And that mattered for that locality. It was also important globally, clearly. And we introduced a global COVID tracker, that tracked, cases and deaths. And I thought that was important globally. But equally, being a watchdog nationally was very important for the people in that country. So yes, everything you said is true. I think that trusted, fact-based journalism that we have always done is a journalistic imperative. There's no question about it, and it's what we do. But I really think that it's also a commercial opportunity. And I think we are seeing, without sort of overstepping, but I think we are seeing in many surveys that there is demand for that, precisely because the pandemic has shown how dangerous it is not to have the right news.
I think we've seen that as well here in Singapore. I mean, for the Straits Times, we put all our COVID-19 content outside the paywall as a public service, but subscriptions actually went up. And it said to me that people were going for trusted news. So I think it has helped us reinforce the power of the brand, as well as the importance of credible journalism. But in a way, we are up against this, you call it a technological arms race, and we're really competing for audiences' time and attention, especially with the younger audience. Tell me how you're dealing with that at Reuters, the fact that people are looking at content on the phone, on the go, short attention spans. How are you grappling with that?
Yeah, I mean, it is the question, right? It's the question about our sustainability and our survival, really, for both of us and for all of us. I would say two things. One is format. The how of the news becomes increasingly important. As you say, the consumption of news is now faster. It's via mobiles. It's short attention spans. So we need to find ways to provide that news in a way that is more easily digestible. And that has a lot to do with formats. So, for example, there is a big event, a volcano or an earthquake or a protest. We need to be able to give almost sound bites, to give a sense of what's going on the ground by in short versions, short and quick and updates. We also need to give context. I find that a lot of people desire context. And again, though, it needs to be given in short, fast, digestible nuggets, if you will. But importantly, to tell you, this is important because, or the history of this is X, Y, and Z. So I think the format is really important, and we're paying a lot of attention to formats across the board. And I should stop here by saying, of course, we have a very particular business model because we essentially are a B2B business in that we provide news for the other media organizations, for big media organizations around the world. We also provide news for Financial Terminal. And now, most recently, we've really invested in our sort of new B2C proposition, which is our website. But across the board, that is true, because ultimately on this other side, there are human beings. On the terminal side, there are also robots, but essentially, human beings are desiring this news faster. So I think formats is a big part of it. But I also think that the what is changing. And there are certain topics, clearly the most important one at the moment is climate and sustainable investing, that are the way to attract a younger generation. They are extremely, extremely interested in these topics, and we need to be there, and we need to cover it in our way, but we need to be there. Second thing, I actually would say a third, and that is not a content issue, but it is a who we are issue. And that, of course, is making our newsroom reflect those worlds that we are covering better. Because we've seen it in so many examples that we are not credible if we do not go out there with our reporters and look like, understand, appreciate, source with the people who are on the ground, the people we are covering. And that is a very, very important part of what we're doing, which is, of course, in the realm of diversity and inclusion. And it's not only about the people, but it's also the people inside our newsroom, but it's also about sourcing. One of the things that we launched last year is a whole review, and I would say refreshing, of the way that we actually seek out sources. We journalists sometimes, we can be a little bit lazy. This source has been a reliable source for the last 20 years, and I'm going to go back to him. It's usually a him, right? And it really is incumbent upon us often to just revisit those sources and say, look, am I actually reaching the people who can tell me what is going on? What does my source book look like, to refresh it, to replenish it? And I think that is really important, again, for really speaking to new generations of audiences.
I'm totally with you in terms of the connection with the audience and being seen to be, one of them, one of us, because I think audiences want to know that you do speak for them and you're connected to the community. So your local idea is certainly something that relates to me, because being rooted in the community, I think, is what gives us that voice and that credibility. But I wanted to take up that point and relate it to what you were talking about, polarization, because if you're not seen to be one of us from the audience, it feeds into that polarization in society. And how do you see Reuters playing its part in that sense? Because groups are forming into social bubbles and their own echo chambers. How does Reuters choose to sort of operate in that complex playing space?
Yeah, so I think perhaps I can answer it in two ways. First of all, again, we feel that this is what is needed in the world today, to not take sides. I would say we journalists in general, but I will speak for ourselves. So we at Reuters, we're not cultural warriors. We leave that polarization or that, going after certain audiences on one side or other, we leave that to somebody else. For some, that might be the right thing, but it is not for us. And it is the way we have operated for 170 years. And we feel that it is still very important. So I think that is the, it is what we do and what we'll continue to do. It's what is outside that has changed, right? And as I was mentioning before, I feel that ultimately the role of news organizations, the role of journalists, is to help people make better decisions. And in the cacophony of the world right now, in every sphere, going back to the social media that we were talking about before, everyone can be out there reporting news. Everybody can be putting video on social media. That's why I think there's a need to say, all right, we can sift through all that and we can provide you what is really going on, the truth. Now, of course, when I say that, I think, we're also writing a first draft of history, right? That's what we journalists do. And I think part of it, to answer the second part of your question, is that we have to be humble enough to realize that we are writing the first draft of history, that we are out there and we are telling you what is happening today, and that things may change, or that we may be making a mistake. And if we make a mistake, we need to correct it. And one of the reasons all the studies show that trust in the media is low is precisely because often in the media has this very sort of arrogant view and does not correct our mistakes. So we are really, really careful, you know, if we hope we don't, we try not to, and I believe we don't make many, but when we do, to correct. And I think that is very important. All of this put together is why I think it's a winning proposition, to answer your question.
So we've been talking about polarization within societies, but we're also becoming a more polarized world in terms of geopolitics, and having to operate in this increasingly complex geopolitical world. How has that impacted your ability of your correspondents all around the world to operate? Are there particular areas of concern in terms of press freedom and their safety?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, it's a great time to cover the world right now. I mean, you know, one of the big stories clearly that we, like others, are covering is, is China and sort of the rise of China as a formidable power, and increasingly it's sort of increasing stance, financially, economically, politically, militarily. So it is, and how does the U.S. respond, right? That is a big global theme that clearly we are covering. You know, our locality, which I really believe is our secret weapon, is of course a great responsibility for us, though, because as you know, local journalists working in their own countries often face much more danger than foreign correspondents who sweep in and then, you know, if needed, can be sort of airlifted out, by their own countries. So we spend a great deal of time really making sure that our local reporters are protected, precisely because I think that they are our secret weapon. That depth of understanding, that depth of sourcing that comes only from really being, in a country is so important to us. But yes, it's a great responsibility.
Do you sense that the space you have to operate all around the world in various countries is expanding or shrinking as a result of events?
I think it's expanding, and this is what again, our footprint is something we're very proud of, and also, frankly, it is something that our clients, our media clients, need us for, because even as other news organizations have had to reduce their footprint around the world, it is really important for us to keep it. You know, the boots on the ground is very important, because when something happens, you've got to be there. And sometimes it's not easy to parachute in for all sorts of even administrative reasons, right?
You sound to me like a glass half full person rather than a glass half empty. What though keeps you awake at night when you think about the media and the future and this huge organization that you've been entrusted with? What's top of your mind that keeps you awake?
Well, first of all, I am always a glass half full person. So, and I always think that way. So many things. I'm going to be honest with you. The thing that I had always worried, and that I had always, the thing about which I had the most trepidation entering this job, unfortunately and tragically has already happened, which is the tragic death of one of our journalists. And that happened over the summer in Afghanistan. And that has marked all of us, me personally. I think that after something like that, I think, and the resilience that this organization has shown as a result of it, and the resilience that the family of Danish Siddiqui is showing in the aftermath, I think with that strength, I really think we can take on everything.
So concern about your journalists on the ground is what worries you most. What gives you hope? To end on an optimistic note, what gives you hope?
Is that we can do, and I hope we do every day, great good for the world. Our role is very, very important. It is a great honor and it is a great responsibility to be in this profession. And certainly our newsroom here at Reuters, everybody feels that. The mission really pervades every corridor of this newsroom, and it really makes me proud to be here. Thank you, Alessandra. Great conversation. I wish we could carry on the conversation in person before too long, either in Singapore or in London. Absolutely. I really look forward to seeing you in person. Thank you. Thank you so much, Warren. Thank you.
Great. That was wonderful.
Okay.
Was that okay? Was the